The snow had begun to fall again, soft and slow, like ash drifting from an unseen fire. From her narrow cell window, Amina Zahra watched it gather on the stone courtyard outside, white, quiet, indifferent. Winter in Nordhaven always felt merciless, but inside the women's wing of Greystone Penitentiary, the cold seemed to seep into the bones more easily, as if the building itself had grown tired of holding so much despair. Amina sat on the edge of the metal bed, her hands folded in her lap, wrists pale from the chill. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead with the same dull persistence they always had. She had lost count of the days, but the guards had not. They reminded her every morning, in their own subtle ways, that her time was almost over. 4 days until the execution. 4 days until the world would forget her name. Or perhaps it already had. The clanging of boots echoed down the hallway, 2 guards approaching. She did not lift her head at first. The routine meant little to her now. But when the footsteps stopped at her door, and when she heard the electric lock click open, a strange stillness moved through her. "Zahra," one guard said, his voice stiff with practiced neutrality. "Warden wants to see you." Amina rose slowly, smoothing the creases of her plain, gray uniform. The guard avoided her eyes. They all do now, she thought. Some out of fear, some out of guilt, but most out of a belief that she had already ceased to exist. They escorted her through the long corridor toward the administrative wing. The prison looked different here, cleaner, warmer, almost civilized. The hallway ended at a wood-paneled office where Warden Elaine Markel waited behind her large desk, fingers steepled. "Amina," the warden said quietly, "please sit." Amina obeyed, her calmness unnerving even the warden. "We've reviewed the formal request you submitted yesterday," Markel continued. "You understand this is highly unusual." Amina nodded. There was no tremor in her posture, no desperation, just a quiet resolve that had unsettled every staff member who had encountered her. The warden exhaled slowly. "You are asking, in your final days, to see a statue or image of the Virgin Mary. Is this correct?" Amina lifted her eyes for the first time, and something ancient and sorrowful moved in them. "Yes," she answered. "That is my only request before I die." The warden leaned back, studying her. "You are Muslim, Amina. You have never made religious requests before. Why now? Why this?" For a moment, Amina hesitated. Not because she was unsure, but because she was afraid that saying it aloud would make everything too real. "Because she came to me," Amina whispered, "in a dream, the night after the trial." The room grew painfully quiet. "Who?" the warden asked, though she already knew the answer. "Mary," Amina said. "Mariam, the mother of Jesus." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled for the first time. "I need to see her again." The warden exchanged a glance with the deputy, standing nearby, half confusion, half concern. This was no last-minute plea for mercy, no psychological breakdown. Amina Zahra spoke with the serenity of someone who had accepted death but was still seeking truth beyond it. "This is a high-security facility," the warden said carefully. "We cannot grant every personal request. Why should this one be different?" Amina lowered her gaze to her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than a sigh. "Because I believe she has something more to show me. Something about what truly happened." The warden stiffened. "If this is another attempt to reopen your case—" "It is not," Amina interrupted gently. "I know my fate is sealed. But before I leave this world, I want to understand why Mary came to me, and what she meant." The warden studied her again, almost searching her face for deception, but there was none. Only a quiet, burning truth that frightened her more than any lie. Finally she stood. "I will consult our chaplain. If this is to happen, it will be under his supervision." Amina bowed her head in gratitude. The guards escorted her back to her cell. As they walked, a few inmates watched through their bars, some with sympathy, others with suspicion. But Amina barely noticed. Her heartbeat had changed. Something had begun. She could feel it, like the echo of a distant voice calling her name. When she entered her cell again, she sat on the bed and closed her eyes. She remembered the dream, the first and only time she had seen the woman in blue, radiant yet sorrowful, calling her daughter in a language that was not Arabic, yet she understood every word. Amina pressed her palms to her eyes, willing herself not to cry. 4 days, she thought. 4 days, until I know the truth. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the courtyard in white, like a clean shroud, gently laid over a world waiting for a miracle. The next morning arrived with a sky the color of steel. The wind howled through the narrow ventilation shafts of the prison, carrying with it the bitter scent of snow. In the small chaplain's office near the east wing, Father Michael Brennan set down his mug of tea, opened the thin file labeled Zara, Amina, and read the warden's report for the 3rd time. "A request for the Virgin Mary," he murmured aloud. The words felt strangely heavy. He had met many prisoners during his years as chaplain: murderers, thieves, women hardened by years of violence or broken by a lifetime of abandonment. Almost all of them, in their final hours, had made some spiritual plea. It was human nature to look toward heaven when the world had collapsed beneath one's feet. But Amina's request was different. She wasn't Christian. She wasn't even religiously active. She kept to herself, prayed silently in Arabic when she thought no one was watching. Father Michael had admired her calmness in the chaos of Greystone, a calmness that now seemed to conceal something far deeper. He closed the file and stood up as a soft knock sounded on his door. Warden Markel entered, expression tight. "Father, thank you for seeing me on short notice." He gestured for her to sit. "It's about Amina." The warden sighed. "Yes, I don't understand it, and frankly, I'm not sure how to proceed." Father Michael folded his hands. "You would like me to speak with her?" She nodded. "I need to know if this is a manipulation tactic or something more serious." He sensed beneath her words the part she didn't say, or something supernatural. People rarely voice such possibilities, but they always lingered in unspoken fears. "I'll talk to her," he said. A guard escorted him to Amina's cell. She was sitting cross-legged on the bed, her posture straight, hands folded neatly in her lap. When she saw him, she lowered her gaze respectfully. "Father Michael," she said softly, "I hoped they would send you." He pulled a metal chair to the corner of the cell and sat opposite her. "The warden told me about your request." Amina nodded but said nothing. "Would you tell me why?" Father Michael asked gently. For a moment, she seemed unsure if she should speak. Then, in a voice fragile as frost, she whispered, "I saw her." He waited. "In a dream," she continued. "But it wasn't a dream. I don't know how to describe it. It felt real, more real than the walls around me." She pressed her fingers against her forehead, as though trying to steady the memory. "I was standing in a desert," she said, "but it wasn't any desert I knew. The sand was white, like light, and then she appeared, a woman in blue, with a face full of sorrow. She looked at me as if she had known me all my life." Amina's voice trembled at the edges. She touched my face and called me daughter. Father Michael felt a chill crawl up his spine. He had heard accounts of visions before, even from dying inmates, but something in Amina's retelling felt untainted, pure, like she wasn't trying to convince him of anything, just struggling to understand it herself. "And you don't know why she came?" he asked. "No," Amina said, "but I feel she wants to show me something important." "Did she speak?" Amina hesitated. "Yes, but the language, I can't explain it. It wasn't Arabic, it wasn't English, yet I understood her, every word." Father Michael's breath caught in his throat. He recognized the description. Glossolalia? Angelic speech? Something else entirely? Before he could respond, footsteps echoed down the hall. A second figure approached, a tall, elderly man with a white beard and warm eyes behind thin spectacles. He wore a simple dark coat and carried a small prayer book. Amina's face lit up faintly. "Imam Yusuf," she whispered. The imam nodded kindly. "Peace be upon you, Amina." "And upon you, Imam," she replied. Father Michael stood, offering his hand. "We've met at interfaith gatherings, but never here. It's good to see you." "And you, Father," the Imam said. His voice was soft, yet carried a calm authority. "The warden informed me of Amina's request. I felt it best to be present as well." He turned to Amina. "My child, our faith honors Mariam deeply. She is among the most blessed women in all creation. Many Muslims have dreamed of her. But this," he paused, "this is unusual." Amina lowered her eyes. "I know," the Imam continued. "You say she came to you, that she spoke, that she touched you, that she called you daughter. These are not small things to claim." Amina swallowed hard. "I wouldn't lie about this." "I believe you," Imam Yusuf said gently. "But believing does not mean understanding." Father Michael sat again, studying both of them. "You feel Mary is trying to show you something, a truth, perhaps?" Amina nodded. "Do you know what it is?" "No," she whispered. "Only that it is connected to the trial, to what happened or what didn't happen." A silence settled over the cell, heavy, uneasy, alive. The Imam finally spoke. "In Islam, Mariam is known for truth, for purity, for miracles. If she has come to you, Amina, it is not without purpose. But," he glanced at Father Michael, "it is rare, very rare, for visions of this magnitude to come to those waiting for execution." Father Michael felt the same unease tightening in his chest. Something was happening here, something neither faith leader fully understood. Something deeper than a dream. Something that felt like the first trembling of a truth buried far too long. Amina lifted her eyes, and for the first time, Father Michael saw fear behind them. "Father, Imam," she whispered, "I don't think this is just about me." Amina's memories did not come in order. They rose and fell like waves, some gentle, some violent, all of them stained with the dust and sunlight of the village where she grew up in the Middle East. She remembered her mother first, a quiet, resolute woman who prayed often, her lips moving softly over verses spoken with a tenderness that made the small house feel like a sanctuary. Among all the figures her mother mentioned in prayer, Mariam, the Virgin Mary, was the one she invoked with the deepest reverence. Amina had asked once, "Mama, why do you pray to her so much?" Her mother smiled, a tired but luminous smile. "Because Mariam protects the innocent, because her heart is a refuge for those who are lost." A memory flashed bright as a flame. Amina was 9. She remembered running through the narrow streets, laughing, when suddenly a truck lost control, hurtling toward her. She froze. A scream, her mother's somewhere behind her. Then, inexplicably, the truck swerved at the last second, scraping a wall instead of crushing her. People later said the driver must have pulled the wheel. The driver insisted he hadn't. But her mother had knelt on the dirt, sobbing in gratitude. "She saved you," she whispered into Amina's hair. "Mariam saved you." For years, Amina kept that moment tucked away, neither fully believing nor forgetting it. The present crashed back in like a cold wind. The metal bars of her cell, the echo of guards' boots, the weight of accusations that felt surreal even now. She thought of the political protest that had spiraled out of control, the shouting crowds, the smoke, the terrified faces pushing past her. And then, the explosion, the chaos, the bodies, the shrill accusations hurled at her by strangers who needed someone, anyone to blame. A foreign woman in the wrong place, at the worst possible time. Her arrest was swift, her trial even swifter. Yet she felt no impulse to run, no rage at the injustice. The only thing she longed for deeply, desperately, was truth, to speak it, and to find peace before she died. Not freedom, not vengeance, just peace. And perhaps clarity about the presence that had once shielded her. About the name she now whispered in the dark, Mary. The past was no longer just haunting her. It was calling her toward something she could not yet understand. Permission came, unexpectedly. After days of hesitation and paperwork, the prison administration finally agreed to bring Amina a small statue of the Virgin Mary, simple, pale, no more than the length of her hand. The guard who delivered it looked confused, almost embarrassed, as if unsure why a Muslim woman would ask for such a thing. Amina accepted it gently, holding it the way one holds something fragile and ancient. That night, she placed it on the metal table beside her bed. She didn't expect anything to happen, but something did. It began with the lights. A soft flicker, then another sharper, quicker, until the overhead lamp trembled with an unsteady glow. A low hum filled the walls, like distant electricity struggling to find a pathway. A scent followed, not harsh like disinfectant, but warm, sweet, like jasmine carried on a desert breeze. Impossible in a place made only of iron, concrete, and stale air. Down the corridor, a guard paused. "What is that smell?" he muttered. Another guard adjusted his cap, uneasy. "You hear that? The lights again." In the control room, the security monitors crackled. One screen went black for a split second, then returned, covered in static. Two others glitched, colors bleeding, silhouettes blurring. "Camera 12 is down," an officer said. And, "What's that in her cell?" But before he could zoom in, the feed dissolved into white snow. Amina felt her knees weaken. The room around her seemed to tilt, the air thickening, vibrating with something she could not name. She reached toward the statue, and the world slipped away beneath her feet. She fell, not onto the floor, but into something deeper. A soft radiance opened around her, bright yet tender, like sunlight softened through clouds. And within that light stood a woman clothed in gentleness, yet bearing a presence that seemed to fill the entire expanse. Her veil shimmered like woven dawn. Her eyes held a sorrow older than centuries and a love deeper than oceans. Amina felt herself tremble. The woman spoke. Her voice was soft, almost like a whisper, but it carried power, the kind that stirs mountains and quiets storms. "Amina, daughter of my heart, do not fear." A warmth spread through her chest, comforting, overwhelming. "You seek peace," the woman continued, "and truth, so listen." Images unfurled around them, sharp, vivid, undeniable. The day of the bombing, the crowd, the confusion, and then a face. A man moving through the protest with deliberate steps. The backpack, the device. A name rose clearly, spoken not by memory, but by revelation. The name of the true orchestrator, the architect of the violence for which she now awaited execution. Amina gasped. The truth was not only real, it was far more sinister than she had imagined. "Amina," the voice said again, gentle but resolute. "You must speak. The world must hear the truth." The vision dissolved like morning mist. She awoke on the cold floor of her cell, breath shaking, tears spilling freely down her face. The statue still gleamed softly beside her, untouched. The scent of jasmine lingered. For the first time since her arrest, fear and hope mingled within her like twin flames. The truth had been given to her. What she would do with it was a question that now felt terrifying, sacred, and unavoidable. The morning after Amina's vision, Father Michael entered the prison with a purpose burning in his eyes. The guards noticed immediately he moved, not with quiet pastoral calm, but with the urgency of a man who had seen a door open where none had existed before. Imam Yusuf arrived minutes later, leaning on his wooden cane, his steps slow but determined. His face carried its usual serenity, yet beneath it was something sharper, an unspoken resolve. They met in the warden's office, the air tense and still. "She received a revelation," Father Michael said. "A vision," Imam Yusuf added, "with details she could never have known." The warden sighed heavily. "A vision? From the Virgin Mary? Gentlemen, this is a high-security facility, not a place for superstition." Father Michael leaned forward. "Then investigate it. Look at the name she provided." Imam Yusuf nodded. "At least verify whether the man she described was present at the protest." The warden folded his arms. "And you truly expect us to reopen a terrorism case based on a dream?" No, Father Michael said quietly, based on truth. For several days, their requests were rejected, dismissed as emotional appeals, religious bias, or misguided compassion. But things began to shift. Slowly at first. Then, all at once. A guard, one who had worked the night of the vision, approached Father Michael privately. "I need to tell someone what I saw," he said, voice trembling. He described the flickering lights, the unnatural scent, the glow he saw under Amina's door. He confessed that the security cameras glitched exactly at that moment, though no electrical fault had been found since. "I'm not saying it was a miracle," he whispered, "but something happened, something I can't explain." His written testimony forced the prison administration to reconsider. Then came the second crack in the wall. A junior investigator reviewing protest footage found a figure whose movements matched Amina's description, a man previously overlooked in the chaotic recordings. The timestamp aligned with the moment the bomb was placed. The name Amina had spoken, uttered through tears after her vision, matched a known radical who had vanished months before. The officials could no longer ignore it. A special inquiry was ordered. Amina's execution was delayed for 72 hours. Outside the prison gates, the world stirred. What began as a handful of worshippers praying quietly grew into a gathering of hundreds. Muslims and Christians stood side by side, some holding rosaries, others holding prayer beads, all united in a single plea: let the truth come out. TV crews arrived. Reporters whispered. The story spread like fire through dry grass. A Muslim woman claims the Virgin Mary revealed evidence to save her life. Some mocked it. Others were moved. But no one could ignore it. Every evening, the crowds grew larger. A circle of Christians prayed the Hail Mary. Beside them, Muslims recited Surah Mariam. For the first time in years, two faiths that often stood in tension now stood shoulder to shoulder in the cold night air, united not by doctrine, but by mercy. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. The warden paced nervously. Officials whispered behind closed doors. The governor's office received petitions from religious leaders across the country asking for a stay of execution until the investigation was complete. Then, on the morning scheduled for Amina's transfer to the execution chamber, a sudden message arrived. A red-stamped document, signed and sealed. Father Michael and Imam Yusuf were in the corridor when the announcement came. "The execution has been halted," a guard said, breathless. "Temporarily suspended, pending further investigation." Father Michael closed his eyes, whispering a prayer of gratitude. Imam Yusuf bowed his head, tears slipping silently into his beard. In her cell, Amina sank to her knees, hands trembling. For the first time since her arrest, hope real, living hope, entered her heart like light through a broken prison window. The investigation moved quickly once the authorities could no longer ignore the evidence. Video footage, witness statements, and digital records all converged to paint a single, undeniable picture. The bombing had been orchestrated by a high-ranking political figure seeking to manipulate public fear for personal gain. Amina's name had been used as a scapegoat, her innocence exploited by those with power. When the news finally reached her cell, Amina sat silently, her hands folded over her lap. The guard who brought the official letter glanced at her, unsure how to react. She read the verdict aloud in a low, trembling voice. "Amina Zahra is hereby declared innocent of all charges." A wave of disbelief and relief washed over her. The weight of months, years of fear and injustice began to lift like a dark cloud breaking apart in the sky. Yet, what had begun as a personal deliverance became something far greater. In the following days, reports started to emerge from other prisoners, women who had never spoken of visions before. Several described dreams of a radiant figure clothed in blue who whispered words of comfort and guidance. Each claimed a deep peace, a reassurance that someone was watching, protecting them in ways they could not fully comprehend. Even the guards were affected. One veteran officer, once hardened and skeptical, approached Imam Yusuf privately. I don't know why I'm telling you this," he admitted, voice rough with emotion, "but that night I saw the light. And since then, I feel something has changed inside me. I want to return to my faith." Imam Yusuf smiled gently. "The light has a way of reaching those whose hearts are open. Sometimes the smallest spark can start a great fire of compassion." Public attention turned to the extraordinary events. Father Michael and Imam Yusuf began speaking together at interfaith gatherings, explaining the story not as a miracle to be idolized, but as a bridge between faiths, proof that mercy, truth, and divine grace could transcend religion, culture, and fear. Imam Yusuf, standing before crowds of Muslims and Christians alike, spoke softly but firmly. "Mariam is revered in our faiths not to divide, but to unite. She calls us to justice, to compassion, and to love. If her presence can save one innocent life, imagine what it can do for the world." The words were echoed by Father Michael, whose voice carried conviction. The story of Amina is more than a legal vindication. It is a call for humanity to see beyond walls, beyond prejudice, and to recognize the hand of mercy wherever it is offered. Finally, the day came when Amina stepped out of Greystone Penitentiary for the first time as a free woman. The air outside seemed different, lighter, almost sacred. Snow still lay on the ground, but she barely noticed it. Her heart felt unburdened, though she knew the road ahead would not be easy. She walked slowly, savoring every breath, every step. People who had once condemned her now watched with awe, respect, and quiet curiosity. Inside, however, the transformation was complete not in the eyes of the world, but within her own soul. The fear, the hopelessness, the longing for truth, all had been met and softened by something beyond her comprehension. Amina had been freed from the prison's walls, yes, but more importantly, she had been freed from despair. Her journey had begun anew, guided by a vision, blessed by a light, and marked by a truth so profound that nothing, neither fear, nor hatred, nor doubt, could ever erase it again. The morning was crisp, the air tinged with the delicate scent of spring. Amina walked slowly down the cobbled streets of the small town where she had been kept in isolation for months, then years. Every step felt lighter than the last, as though the burdens of fear, injustice, and doubt had been lifted from her shoulders. Her first stop was a modest church at the edge of town. Inside, the air was filled with the gentle aroma of incense and the soft murmur of prayers. Amina knelt in silence, placing her hands over her heart, whispering gratitude not only for her freedom, but for the vision that had guided her, for the unseen hand that had steered the truth into the world. From there, she made her way to a nearby mosque. She removed her shoes, feeling the cool tiles beneath her feet, and knelt again. Her lips moved softly in Arabic, words of thanks mingling with tears she did not try to restrain. She prayed for those who had suffered, for those who still doubted, and for the harmony she had glimpsed in the visions that had changed her life forever. Later, she met Father Michael in a quiet garden between the two houses of worship. The conversation was gentle but profound, a dialogue between two souls who had witnessed something extraordinary. "Do you understand it all?" she asked, her eyes searching his. Father Michael shook his head slowly. "No, and I do not think anyone ever could. But I know that the truth, and the mercy that accompanied it, was enough to change everything." Amina smiled softly, feeling the truth of his words deep within. Months later, she returned to her childhood village. The familiar dirt paths, the sun-warmed stones, and the scent of jasmine drifting from her mother's garden all welcomed her home. She approached the small shrine where her mother had often knelt, praying for protection, guidance, and hope. Amina carried a simple bouquet of white lilies. She placed it gently at the base of the shrine, fingers lingering on the cool stone. She whispered a prayer to Mariam, thanking her for protection, for guidance, and for the courage to forgive not only those who had wronged her, but herself for ever doubting the light. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky with gold and rose, Amina turned and began walking toward the fields beyond the village. Each step carried her forward, each breath infused with a new purpose. She carried no weapons, no anger, no need for revenge. Only hope and the quiet conviction that the world, divided as it might seem, could be healed, one act of truth, mercy, and reconciliation at a time. And as she walked, the sun rose fully, bathing her path in light. Amina moved forward into a life reborn, a life dedicated to bridging hearts, mending souls, and carrying the message of peace to every corner that needed it. Her journey was only beginning, but this time she was ready.